Helen Keller. I mean, her physical disabilities that she had were all terrible, were all awful. And we don't want people to have physical disabilities, but we wouldn't kill her because of that. And in fact, she turned her disabilities, because of them, she was able to become the kind of person she was. Something very valuable to humanity. She's a great, it's an uplifting story. And the same thing can be done with religion. There can be much good that comes from it. We can, even though it is an illness, even though it is a disorder, even with those understandings or those terminologies, it still doesn't have to be a bad thing. We can use our hardships, we can use our handicaps to make us better, to make the world better. And we can gain much from the stories of religion. We can learn about ourselves, about our perceptions of the world, about our potential and possibilities. If we can dream God can do something, well then maybe that means we can do it. And sorry, fundamentalist, if that sounds terrible to you, thinking that man can become God, have godly qualities. But it's true. Much can be gained from religious thoughts, feelings, expressions. So to call it a mental disorder is in no way taking away from the good that can be gained from it. And it is, in fact, a disorder that has varying degrees. I mean, a blemish on your skin is not a big deal. It may not look pretty and it may interfere a little bit with your social life or whatever, but it doesn't destroy your life, and you shouldn't be put in jail because of it. You shouldn't be outcast. But if that blemish, instead of just being a blemish on your skin, turns out to be leprosy on your skin, if your skin is falling off, it's extremely bad for you. Leprosy is a contagious disease. And in fact, the meme of religion, it can be a way to pass on the extremist view of things. So it really is a matter of degree. And the way I look at it is, if you understand that you don't know there's a God, you hope there's a God, you believe that there's a God, you have faith there's a God, but you don't know. You have no empirical knowledge of any such being. And if you can understand that, and still hold to your stories, to the ideas, the things that make you feel good, the things that you think bring good into the world, without infringing upon other people with their opposing beliefs, their opposing stories, or their lack of stories, then that's not a bad thing. And they're in no way, because it's like with the HIV virus. I mean, just because someone has HIV, you do not put them in jail. And I know at the beginning of the epidemic, of the problem, that was a big concern. Many people, especially in the gay community specifically, didn't want any sort of tracing of the disease. They didn't want any reporting of partners, that type of thing, because they honestly felt that there would be some sort of backlash, repercussion, put in concentration camps, eliminated, things like that. And in fact, after several decades of having experience with the disease, and now using the statistical information to help us get a handle on, help us control it better, that none of that has come to pass. Doesn't mean that in the future it couldn't. I mean, we're always capable of changing our ways and becoming evil or becoming good. But it was an unfounded fear, and in fact much good has been done because we now have a better understanding of the way the disease progresses from person to person. We now know how it is passed along, that type of thing. We know so much more. But at the beginning there was the fear that there was going to be these concentration camps if anybody knew that you had the disease. So you didn't even want it to be called a disease. You didn't want to be labeled with HIV, because the acknowledgement that you had it to others, to acknowledge you had a disease, would then result in your being persecuted, thrown in concentration camps, or some such nonsense. It didn't feel like nonsense. It was a semi-valid fear based on looking at past human endeavors. I mean, the Nazis are a very big thing. a very big example. And everybody, a lot of people now are trying to throw that up as a straw man argument that, I don't know if that's the right term, but as an argument against declaring it a mental disorder, because then we'll be putting everybody in concentration camps if they don't follow the party line, and we'll be starting to claim other things are mental disorders like politics and things like that. And that's not really true. We can never solve our problems if we refuse to at least acknowledge what they really are. And like I said, to acknowledge that someone has a disease in no way negates that person, in no way makes them a worse person, in no way says they should be punished for this. If in the course of their disease they do in fact inflict physical harm on other people, then they need to be punished for inflicting the physical harm. If I'm a KKK member and believe in the supremacy of the white person and all that, but in all of my dealings with other human beings, I am polite, courteous, never once hurt anyone, but just have this bigotry in my soul, which I don't, please, I do not have that. But if a KKK member has that bigotry in their soul, but never once lets it have an external influence on another human being, then there's no reason to put them in jail. But if a KKK goes and burns a cross on someone's lawn, that's a reason to put them in jail. If they throw rocks through their window, that's a reason to put them in jail. If they express their belief in hateful, unlawful, disruptive type, and I shouldn't even use the word disruptive because that could be taken out of context. The point is, if you can hold any belief you want in your head, it can still be an illness, but if you're not inflicting that on other people, if you're not hurting other people with it, we as a society, as a culture, our governments have no right to then say, because of that disease, because of that disorder, we're going to throw you in jail, we're going to take away your rights. That's what we need to stand up for. We need to stand up for our rights. We don't need to stand up for labeling something that is a disease for not labeling it a disease. We don't need to say, oh, you can't call it a disease because that'll create chaos in the world. That's not true. If you name things for what they are, if you're honest, if you're realistic, rational, if you look at the world as best as possible and understand what it is, not what you wish it to be or what you're afraid it will be, but look at it what it is, then you have a better chance to resolve any of the resulting problems, to make life better. I've gone on now for a good long time, and I probably don't have much of this on tape. So hopefully it recorded onto the computer, though. One other thing is, I don't remember her name now, but the woman who has acknowledged that she has been diagnosed with schizophrenia and is in fact on medication, I think it's really offensive to use her as a poster child for this anti-intellectual, anti-rational response to what reality really is. I mean, she's entitled to her opinion too. I mean, it's just, you know, somebody who has cancer doesn't have, she doesn't believe it's a mental disorder. Well, somebody who has cancer, just because they have cancer doesn't mean they doesn't mean they can stand up and say, I'm sick, I have cancer, I know what illness is. That person over there who has a cold, flu, they're not sick. They don't know what illness is. I know because I have cancer. Therefore, I'm right, they're wrong, and then put me up as the poster child. And I'm not saying she did this, but I'm saying that some of the people's reactions have in fact tried to do that, to put her in that position. I think that's disrespectful. It's not addressing her, it's not addressing and agreeing with her arguments, with her perspective. It's just making her a poster child. And I think that's offensive. That's no worse than if someone were standing up there and condemning her and calling her all sorts of names because she has a mental disorder, because she suffers from schizophrenia. So that's my opinion. Probably won't post it because I'm sure if I posted it I would get all kinds of backlash from it. So I'd like to, though. I'd like to get this out there. I'd like to be able to stand up for what I see as reality and not be trashed for it. Peace out.